Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page, is it 359? The last 4 lines. This throws light, incidentally, on the opposition made by our minds.
What I'll do, I think I'll give you the reference of what he said earlier. So, a quick look, a summary of what he said in the previous para. Okay? So, I'm just giving you the summary of what he said in the previous para. Okay? The third power, he spoke of 3 powers which you have to grant to the Satchidananda. Then you can understand how all the seeming contradictions at our level, they get harmonized fully. First is its capacity to station itself at any level it wants. Second is it can contract itself. So now he is talking of the third power. The third power that we must grant to the Absolute is that of self-absorption. Okay? Limitation. The second one is limitation, and now it is absorption. So first power, it can station itself anywhere it wants. It can station itself in matter, in life, in mind, in the supermind, in the overmind, wherever it wants, it can station itself and take on the nature of that plane. The nature of each plane is different. Matter is quite different from mind. So when this Satchidananda decides to take the station of mind, it will have the characteristics of mind. When it takes the station in matter, it will have the characteristics of matter. He discusses what the characteristics are later on. Okay? So, first power, stationing itself where it wants. Second power, it can limit itself. Third power, the third power that we must grant to the Absolute is that of self-absorption, where knowledge as we know it does not exist because subject and object become one, and knowledge, which is a link between the two, becomes redundant. There is no need of knowledge because you become what you want to know. Knowledge is that which links the knower to the known or to be known. So knowledge disappears when subject and object become one. Knowledge by identity. You become what you want to know. But this is a knowledge by identity. There is nothing to be aware of because manifestation has not yet taken place. You are concentrating and you are only aware of yourself. So there is nothing to be known except yourself, and you know that. The manifestation takes place when there is the opposite movement of expansion. Whatever is there in me, I expand, and exactly like the seed in the tree. The seed is the contracted or condensed tree, and the seed expands itself and goes outwards and produces all that is there in it. So Satchidananda in itself is a seed.
But when you say you are one there, what do you mean by you?
It can be who and what both. No?
Okay.
Because it can be personal as well as impersonal.
At that stage.
At that level, yes.
Yes.
At the lower levels, sometimes you experience it only as impersonal. Sometimes you can experience it only as personal. This was the big event in Ramakrishna's life. He was approaching the divine through form. He was seeing his divine mother, he was talking to her, getting responses and all. It was like a person. But he had no idea of the impersonal aspect of the divine. And so a Brahma-jnani had to come and teach him how to go to the impersonal aspect of the divine. That's an interesting story. I think we have said it several times. Briefly, I can just repeat that story because maybe you don't remember. So, it was an ascetic who came, and he was bare-bodied. He used to wear only a small loincloth, and he had a jug for water. That's all, and wooden sandals, nothing else. Completely, renunciation of the world entirely. But he was a Brahmajnani. He knew the Brahman. So he told him, do you know what the Brahman knowledge is? He said, no, I don't know all that. I know my mother, and I am very happy with that. He says, no, you must know also the impersonal aspect of the divine. So he made him sit in a hut, and he told him, concentrate here. So he started concentrating here, and he says, what are you seeing? He said, I am seeing my mother. I am seeing the form of my mother. And he says, no, concentrate again, and don't think of any form. Get rid of all forms. Still, he is not able to see anything but his mother. So then, Totapuri was his name. He was a Hindi-speaking man, and he came and taught Ramakrishna this. He says, in fact, he got annoyed with him. He took a broken piece of, they were in a hut, so he took a broken piece of pottery, a shard, and pressed it here so hard that actually a few drops of blood came out. And he said, concentrate here. He said, sorry, I am only seeing the form of my mother. Then he tells him, take the sword of knowledge in your hand and cut your mother into two. And since he is in the process of learning, and whatever he is learning, he believes in his guru, he did that. And the moment he did that, he went short into the formless. And it was so wonderful there. Peace, sense of infinity, bliss. He didn't want to come down. He was lingering there. And this Totapuri kept him alive by pushing food into his mouth and looking after him for 3 months. And in some places it is said 6 months, and some places it is said 3 months. But he kept him alive like that because all the time his body is not aware of the physical world. He is in that blissful state. So finally the Divine Mother had to tell him, you can't be there all the time. You have work to do in the physical world. Just like in Sri Ramanuja's case, come down here and do the work. This happened to all, to Raman Maharshi also. I'll tell you that story, it's very interesting. So, he has to remain anchored here. But how does he remain anchored here? His consciousness has experienced that, constantly shooting up and remaining there. So just like a ship has to anchor itself to the ground, otherwise it will keep on moving. So he made a small desire, and the desire is, I want to drink water. I'm a jal khabo. So that kept him rooted to the ground. There is another story also, variant of the story, that he started taking interest in food, which he was not at all interested in. He used to go and ask his wife, Sharda Muni. He used to ask, what are you cooking today? What is for lunch? What is for dinner? And she used to get a little annoyed, saying, here is this fellow who is a Brahman knower and is worried about what he's going to eat. She used to feel little. But this was the reason. The reason is something has to hold him down. So a seeming desire. It's not really a desire, but something seeming. So he had to be brought down here. Those who have such knowledge, they have to be of some use to the world. If he is living there all the time, what will happen? So this is one story. Now the same thing happened to Ramana Maharshi. It did not happen to Sri Ramanuja because he knew he has to be here. And his yoga is no rejection of the physical world. So Ramana Maharshi also, after his realization of the Brahman, he was going up the hill, Tiruvannamalai, he was going up the hill, and there is a cave midway. So he says, I'll sit there and I don't bother about the world. But as he was going, if any of you have gone there, you will see it's a small path. It's a narrow, you've been there. So that narrow path, you remember, 15 minutes walk up the hill. And then there's a cave where he used to live. So he is going there, but he suddenly finds a woman sitting there with her legs stretched out. And he can't go this way, that way, because it's full of thorns. Very thorny path. So he tells her, please, very respectfully he tells her, please remove your feet so that I can go there. So he says, why do you want to go there? You go down. Remain at the foothill. Why do you want to go here? So he had to come down and remain at the foot of the hill, and slowly the ashram formed around him. And it is a story in our ashram here that was the Divine Mother's doing. Our mother's doing. I don't know if they believe that, but that's the story that we have here.
You have a story of Mother doing that?
No, I'm saying in the ashram, it is believed that this old lady who was stretching her legs
mother.
And not allowing was our mother.
I see.
Just as we also know that Hitler was directed by the Asuric force. It was Mother who put on that, the outer form of the one who used to guide him. You know that, no? The Hitler used to see a being, and he used to be guided by that being.
And that being was incredible.
Yes.
He was powerful but beautifully dressed.
Yes.
He had a light also.
Gold, I think, was also there.
Yes, it was a golden light. Yeah.
So it is said that it is Mother who took that form.
Yeah, I read that story of Mother,
story.
Yes. Very interesting.
And encouraged him to attack Russia.
Invade Russia, yes.
And that was the
beginning. And then she met the being on the way back.
Yes.
You read
That's
you remember
right,
that,
exactly.
Huh? And he said, I know what you have done.
That's right. So, such great people, they have to be of some use in the world. So they were made to do it. Whereas Ramda he knows that he has to do that. And that's why he accepted the difficulties of the world. So, we come back to our text. There is nothing to be aware of because manifestation has not yet taken place, where at the highest level, where there is a condensation. Satchidananda condenses itself and looks only into itself. There is no manifestation. There is no outward going movement. Then, he says in the para, this self-absorption can be complete as in superconscious or in the inconscience. So, it's the same. In the inconscience also, it's a concentration in darkness, whereas there it's a concentration in light. That's the only difference. So, personal and the nirguna, okay, this self-absorption can be complete as in superconscious or in the inconscience, or can be partial as in the saguna, Ishvara, personal, and the nirguna, self, impersonal, in the partial self-absorption. The complete awareness is not absent, but held back in the background, ready to show itself in the right conditions, much like a storehouse of stocks, not yet involved in the processing of products. That's an image which I have added, okay. All these things are there in the storehouse, but they have not yet come out for production. Suppose you are running a factory, okay. The machines need ink and paper. But the storehouse has got all the ink and the paper, it is there. So when there is a demand, it comes out. Okay? Exactly the same way, this consciousness is there in the background, and when it is necessary, it comes out in the middle stages. Otherwise, it is partial. Brahman, this concentration, okay, let's be more specific. When there is this highest level is a condensed consciousness. There is no outward movement, there is no manifestation. So if you want to manifest, it has to go outwards. Just like the seed produces a tree. Right? Out of itself, everything comes out. So there is a diminution and a limitation in the middle stages. In the inconscious and the superconscious, there is absolute condensation. No outward going movement. But the moment it starts, this way it is involving itself and producing everything, all the worlds. From here, it is also producing, but in the reverse order. Both are evolutionary. This also, but this you don't call evolution, you call it involution. From below, you call it evolution. So, in the middle stages, it's all partial. Our mind doesn't have full knowledge. Our vital doesn't have any. So it's a question of in this one. But the Satchidananda, the condensed Satchidananda is always there in the background, waiting to show itself if necessary. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, in other words, in the higher mind, in the overmind, in the illumined mind, in the overmind, you can have glimpses of the totality. You can have glimpses of the supermind. You can have glimpses of the ultimate reality, but only for a short while. You can have an experience, you can have a glimpse in the between. When the conditions are right, the divine shows itself in full. That's what he's saying.
So Nolini said, when he was asked, where do you live? He said, in the overmind and a little higher.
And sometimes he said, in the supermind.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So, the overmind, we know, is the plane of consciousness, which is just below the supermind. So he used to have touches of this. But let me make one thing clear. This is reported not by Nolini himself.
Ah.
This is reported by Animadi, who was his close helper.
Yes.
So, you can either accept it or you need not accept it. But it's not authenticated. But that Nolida was a very, very advanced sadhak, everybody knows. Because even in the Wednesday classes, Mother used to address him. When the question of Purusha and Prakriti came up, okay, Mother doesn't like this idea of Purusha and Prakriti because there is this question of masculine and feminine. Okay, that's an interpretation for understanding. Okay, and so Mother said, I don't know anything about this. If you want, you can ask Nolini in the class. And Nolina said, if Mother says that she does not know, I don't know either. So, why would she refer to him unless he is that knowledgeable about all these things? So
we begin the para.
Yeah, a little more is there. These three powers taken together can explain the mysterious ways of the divine Maya. Which are the three powers? The power to station itself anywhere, the power to limit itself, and the power to concentrate itself. Okay, so these, if you take these three, everything becomes understandable. Power, the three powers I am reading out. The power of stationing itself on various levels. The 7 planes of existence, as is easily seen in the world of mind, life and matter, we see. But there is also the mind, life, matter, supermind, Sat, Chit, Ananda. These are the 7 planes. It can station itself anywhere it wants and take on the characteristics of that plane. I'm sorry, my voice is... Okay, so that's number 1. Power, second. Power of self-limitation. Example, leaves on the tree where each single leaf is conscious of the tree. This is what his example. Leaves on the tree. Or we can also take it as a wave which is conscious that it is part of the sea. The wave knows that it's a limited part of the sea. So that's the second power that Satchidananda has got. It can limit itself. Okay? And then the third power, power of self-absorption. Superconscient and the inconscient. And in between, the incomplete, as on all the planes of existence between the two poles. Now we read the para that we have to read today. This throws light incidentally on the opposition made by our minds between pure consciousness, pure existence, pure bliss, and the abundant activity, the manifold application, the endless vicissitudes of being, consciousness and delight of being that take place in the universe. So, it can station itself entirely in bliss, it can station itself entirely in consciousness, or in power, or in Ananda, whatever it wants. That's what he's saying. This explains. If you take these three powers, then you can understand how it can do that. Okay?
The opposition of our minds,
Yes.
made by our minds.
The opposition made by our mind means we can't understand how it can be conscious and unconscious at the same time, how it can be one. The duality is in the physical world. For us, they are opposites. But it is not so for the supermind, for the Satchidananda. It can take itself wherever it wants. It can station itself. In the state of pure consciousness and pure being, we are aware of that only, simple, immutable, self-existent, without form or object, and we feel that to be alone real, true and real. So, I am reading this sentence again. I didn't read it correctly. In the state of pure consciousness and pure being, we are aware of that only, simple, immutable, self-existent, without form or object, and we feel that to be alone, true and real. In other words, there is no bliss and there is no, only substance is there, substance and consciousness. There is no power, no bliss. You are aware only of that. Nirvana experience he's talking of. Okay. Then he's saying, in the other or dynamic state, we feel its dynamism to be perfectly true and natural, and we are even capable of thinking that no such experience as that of pure consciousness is possible. The dynamic state he is talking about the physical world here. When we are, it can be spiritual and it can also be in ignorance. We also, sometimes the mind can think that this can be nothing else apart from body-mind life. Level 1. But it can also happen in the spiritual plane of consciousness. You can, when you are aware only of Chit, you are aware only of bliss, you take a different direction. I think we have spoken about this once. When you are aware only of Sat, substance, then you have the Mayavada philosophy. The world is unreal. When you are aware of consciousness alone, then you have the Sankhya philosophy of Purusha and Prakriti. In the Sat experience, the world is unreal. In the consciousness experience, that is conscious, but the world is not unreal. It is real, but mechanical and unconscious. Power, Purusha, Prakriti. Purusha, Prakriti. Mechanical, unconscious. The river is flowing, the wind is blowing, no consciousness anywhere. Automatically is taking place. Okay, that's the Sankhya philosophy. When you experience only consciousness, then you can experience only Ananda. Then you have the Vaishnava theory. The world is real and the world is a play. It's a Leela. So depending on what you are experiencing exclusively. And of course in the supermind you will experience all the three together. Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. Okay, so in the other or dynamic state, we feel its dynamism to be perfectly true and natural, and are even capable of thinking that no such experience as that of pure consciousness is possible. Yet it is now evident that to the infinite consciousness, both the static and the dynamic are possible. These are two of its statuses, and both can be present simultaneously in the universal awareness, the one witnessing the other and supporting it, or not looking at it and yet automatically supporting it. This is a very interesting sentence. I think we discussed this last time, but we will look at it again. Okay, so he's saying, yet it is now evident that to the infinite consciousness, both the static and the dynamic are possible. So, in the nirvana experience, you are in the static. Your consciousness has gone into the static, immutable consciousness. No movement at all. The world is in movement, but it is unreal. But you can have the cosmic consciousness. And if you have the cosmic consciousness, the world is real and the movement also is real. It's not unreal. and you are in a static condition. So both together.
So how do the Buddhists or others who go into that...
They are experiencing only the consciousness.
Right.
Or they are experiencing only the Sat. And they see the physical world as unreal and they take that to be the ultimate truth. That's what Swami is saying. So it is valid partially.
Yes.
It's not fully true, but partially true. All these are true. And he says all these things come from the overmind level of consciousness. It's in the overmind that you see that all these different philosophies and different systems of yoga, they are all true partially. They are not contradictory at all. They are perfectly harmonized and they are different aspects of the truth. But they are not contradictory. But when you go to the supermind, there is no question of contradiction. That's the origin from which everything comes out. Everything is actually ultimately one. Because there is only one. Is the concentrated condition. There is no difference. Okay, so we read the next sentence. I also gave you an example of this. It was very interesting. I told you about an incident that was recorded in one of the... there's a lot of research going on in the West. Okay, a lot of research. And these books are very, very interesting. By Brian Weiss and by Raymond Moody and by Edgar Casey. These are all fantastic verifications and confirmations of spiritual experiences. They're very interesting. So in one case, what happened was, a man is coming on a scooter or a motorcycle and he has an accident and he falls down. I think we have discussed this one day. And his being comes out. And he's seeing his body lying on the road. But he knows that he is here and he knows that part of him is also there. So this is the experience that Swami is saying. You are in both consciousness at the same time. In the out of the body experience, static. No movement. And there you can see all the movement. Of course he is not moving, but this is only a way to explain. Okay, that he is lying there, part of your consciousness is there. So this is possible when you have the cosmic consciousness. But when you have only the nirvana experience, the world is unreal. It's not both. Okay, so both can be present simultaneously in the universal awareness, the one witnessing the other and supporting it, or not looking at it and yet automatically supporting it. All these experiences are possible, he says. He says that in the nirvana experience, you are watching your own body, your own life, your own mind, thinking, acting, having emotions, but you are not, you're just watching it from outside. And you're not even interested in interfering. Okay? That's one. And the other he's saying is, you look at it and you realize that there is a connection. You look at it and there's a connection. And if you realize that you are connected, you can also have an influence on your body-mind life. They are the grades in the spiritual planes of consciousness. First you become the witness, then you become the Anumanta, the permission giver, and then you withhold the permission if you want for certain habits. Then you become the knower, then you become the supporter, you become the Bharta. These are all the different grades in the spiritual planes of consciousness. Finally, you can become master. You can become master of your own body-mind life. So the sequence is, first you are the witness. No power on the body-mind life and you are not interested either. Let it go. It will die out in time. Why should I bother about it? I am pure consciousness and more than satisfactory. Then you become the knower. And you see the connection. You become the supporter. So Bharta, then Bhokta, and finally Ishvara. So these are the grades. So Srendra will give you another instance also. Here also he is going to tell you. Okay, so automatically supporting. Or the silence and status may be there, penetrating the activity or throwing it up like an ocean, immobile below, throwing up a mobility of waves on the surface. This is what one person described to me who had the experience of the nirvana. Okay, he had gone to mother, and mother told him, I am very happy with you, my child. I am very happy with your work. But he said, but mother, I am not working now. Because when you are in the nirvana consciousness, there is a tendency to ignore the world. So he was not working much. So he said, but mother, I am not working. He said, no, I am very happy. Because he had the Brahmic consciousness. And he described to me also the whole thing. He told me, I asked him, you have thoughts? He says the thoughts are there, but they are ripples on the surface of the ocean. They don't disturb me in any way. So that's what Srendra is saying. See, he's saying, or the silence and the status may be there, penetrating the activity or throwing it up like an ocean, immobile below, throwing up a mobility of waves on the surface. So this is the experience that he had. Emotions also are coming, but they are very, very insignificant. Okay. Then there is something else also he is going to tell you. We will see that. Throwing up a mobility of waves on the surface. This is also the reason why it is possible for us in certain conditions of our being to be aware of several different states of consciousness at the same time. So, you can be stationed like mother and Srendra were. They will talk to you, that means that part of their consciousness is the physical world. Or they are there also, part is there. But if you are only there, you are not aware of the physical world, like in trance. Or if you are only here, you may remember, but you are not conscious of those planes. You can get it back by concentration, but it is not living to you at that time. But Srendra is saying it is possible to have both. Obviously, because mother and Srendra both had that. But there is one very interesting thing. The experience of the supramental boat. Okay? Mother was not conscious in the physical world. She was not. Because she says that I was there and I was absolutely real. It is much more real than the physical world. And I was there directing who has to go on to this supramental boat and who is not yet ready. And this is not a question of psychology. Psychology is just a way of looking at the colors of the being. And I know that you are ready or you are not ready. Okay? So those who are that golden orange of the supermind, they are ready. You can go on the boat. You are not yet ready. Prepare yourself a little more and then go. So this is what she was doing. And then she says, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then she says, suddenly the clock chimed. And she was pulled back into the physical world. And then she says, I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to come back because it was so wonderful, that experience. I wanted it to continue. But the pull of the world was very strong and she had to come down here. And she remembered the whole thing. Normally you can also forget what you have experienced there. That's what happens in dreams. Very rarely do you remember your dreams. So, sometimes if you remember your dreams, if you look carefully at them, you will see that they are symbolic, very often. Depending on the person, of course. So, mother was not conscious of the physical world at that time. And she was pulled down here, she says. So this, the clock, the chiming of the clock, she was pulled down. But in normal conditions, she is aware of the spiritual planes of consciousness and also the physical world. But the supermind was something else. It's level 3, na? So that's why to be stationed there permanently is something fantastic. Then the supermental race will form. But you can have the experience of the supermind, but to be stationed there permanently is something else. Okay? So that's what he's saying here. We'll read that sentence again. We'll see. This is also the reason why it is possible for us in certain conditions of our being to be aware of several different states of consciousness at the same time. There is a state of being experienced in yoga in which we become a double consciousness. One on the surface, small, active, ignorant, swayed by thoughts and feelings, grief and joy, and all kinds of reactions. The other within, not external, calm, vast, equal, observing the surface with an immovable detachment and indulgence, or it may be acting upon its agitation to quiet, enlarge, transform it. Now, I think this also we did, I remember now, because we went into that indulgence word. In the synthesis, he explains what he means by indulgence. Okay, you are there in your consciousness high up, and you are seeing yourself. Maybe anger is taking place at the body, mind, life level, but your consciousness is up here, and you are seeing that, but not getting disturbed at all. You are just watching. Oh, I am angry. My body, mind, life is getting angry. You are not disturbed at all. Okay, but sometimes the attitude can be of indulgence, he's saying. And what is that indulgence? He says, he gives the example of a child, okay, having tantrums. Is there in the synthesis. He is having tantrums. Why? Because his toy has been taken away. And he starts howling and crying. But the parent knows that there is nothing serious about this. So, when you are looking and the body, mind, life is suffering in pain, or there is even cancer if you want, okay, to that consciousness, it's nothing. It's just indulgently, okay, you are suffering, no problem. It's not serious. That's why he's using the word indulgence. Is there just one word, and there he has used a full sentence to explain that. Okay? In other words, your calm, quiet, peaceful atmosphere will not be disturbed at all. Okay, so, or it may be acting upon its agitation to quiet, enlarge and transform it. So, you can be unconnected, you can be connected without involvement, indulgently looking, or you have the power to act upon it. A little bit of power is there, you act upon your anger or your greed, and you see it slowly disappearing. The power is not full, therefore it takes some time for the habit to die out. And we gave the example of that scooter, if you remember. I am sitting on a scooter and going. These examples are very interesting because they explain exactly the yogic process. When you are in level 2 of the spiritual planes of consciousness, your power is not full. Sometimes there is no power at all, no interest also. But if there is a little power, you can use that to change your bad habits if you want. Okay? If you are a smoker, you want to give up smoking, you put that force on and you will give up that habit, but not immediately because the power is not full. So it's very similar to the process by which I am going on a scooter. I want to save my petrol. My destination is 100 meters away. I switch off my engine. The permission giving is switched off. But the scooter continues for 100 meters more. The habit will continue even when you have said, no, I don't want anger. Okay, it will continue but die out because the permission has been switched off. That's what he's saying. With an immobile detachment, or it may be acting upon its agitation to quiet, enlarge, transform it. All these possibilities are there. Total non-involvement in the physical world, semi-involvement, but without any action, or involvement with action. Everything is possible. Okay. So too, we can rise to a consciousness above and observe the various parts of our being, inner and outer, mental, vital, physical, and the subconscious below all, and act upon one or other or the whole from that higher status. It is possible also to go down from that height or from any height into any of these lesser states and take its limited light or its obscurity as our place of working, while the rest that we are is either temporarily put away or put behind, or else kept as a field of reference from which we can get support, sanction, or light and influence, or a status into which we can ascend or recede, and from it observe the inferior movements. This also will give a period in the ashram history when this happened. Okay, so he's saying that Srimda has achieved the overmind in 1926. He has the power of the overmind. Now he looks below and sees that his vital is still not very clear. Or it may not be his vital, but the vital in the ashram. Okay, because he was working at a collective level. So he stations himself in the vital and starts transforming it. That's what he's saying, if you look carefully. He stations himself in the vital and starts transforming it. So what is the result? Fantastic experiences all the sadhaks are having.
Yes.
That was the golden period of in the. Then even visitors used to come and have experiences, because the vital is a tremendous dramatic area. Lot of drama takes place in the vital, good and bad both. So this is what happened. Then when it was sufficiently pure, the atmosphere, the vital atmosphere, Sri Aurobindo brought it down to the physical consciousness. He stationed himself in the physical consciousness. Then all these miraculous experiences stopped.
Oh.
So that is the golden period of the ashram, where even visitors were having experiences.
And you?
No, not much. This is the 1930s. I was born in 39.
Ah.
Yeah, it is possible also to go down from that height or from any height into any of these lower states and take its limited light or its obscurity as our place of working, while the rest that we are is either temporarily put away or put behind, or else kept as a field of reference from which we can get support, sanction, or light and influence, or a status into which we can ascend or recede from it. Observe the inferior movements. Okay? So, this is what Mother used to do. Mother is doing the sadhana for everybody. So, at night, she would enter into each sadhak. There were very few at that time. 25, 30, maximum 40, 50 in those days. So, she used to go to each person, identify herself with that person, see his problems. So, now her consciousness has become that consciousness. And then now, but she has the power and she knows what to do to purify that man. And she is helping him in that way. Now it depends upon his receptivity.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is what she was doing. So this is the description being given here. That's what is happening. In fact, it's very interesting. When Pavitrata passed away, you know what happened, no? When Pavitrata passed away, he poured his whole being into Mother.
Yeah.
And this took several hours, the process. And Mother says, now he is there within me, and sometimes I have a little difficulty. I think like him.
Oh.
So, the two consciousnesses have merged. So, identification.
But Mother did say he could not have done it as he was in this life.
Yes, and
Something
then she
like
says
that.
that I did not know that he was capable of it.
Yes, yes.
And that shows that he was a great yogi. Or we can plunge into a trance. Now this is the other. You can either be in that consciousness and see the world as unreal, or you can be in that consciousness and the physical world at the same time, and you can be in the higher consciousness and change things in the physical world, or you are absolutely oblivious to the physical world, you are in trance. You are only in that level and you are not aware of the physical world at all. That's what he's saying. Or we can plunge into a trance, get within ourselves and be conscious there while all outward things are excluded. We are not conscious of them at all. Or we can go beyond even this inner awareness and lose ourselves in some deeper other consciousness or some high superconscious. So you can go level 2 or even level 3. You can go. That's what he's saying. And this is also how you can be totally unaware of what is there. One very interesting example is there. Vivekananda, when he is concentrating, he used to go sometimes to Ramakrishna, and he is sitting in the garden, almost a forest-like area. He is sitting there and concentrating, and his body is full of mosquitoes. Not bothered at all. Because his consciousness is there. There is no physical consciousness here at all. No awareness of the physical world. So the one who reported that was surprised. What fantastic concentration. You are completely unaware of the physical world. So that's what he's saying. Or we can plunge into trance, get within ourselves and be conscious there while all outward things are excluded. Mosquitoes and all. Or we can go beyond even this inner awareness and lose ourselves in some deeper other consciousness or some high super conscience. With trance you can go to any level. That's what she's saying. There is also a pervading equal consciousness into which we can enter and see all ourselves with one enveloping glance or omnipresent awareness, one and indivisible. So you can rise to a height where you can see everything. That's what he's saying. You see the entire universe and you see all the things also in it. Okay. So all these type of things are possible. Or at the supramental level, you are aware simultaneously of the transcendent, the cosmic and the individual. Otherwise you can be conscious only of that. That's the concentrated condition. Or you can be only conscious of the universe, cosmic consciousness. Or you can be conscious only of your own individuality at our level. So all these are possible. And there is no contradiction between them because the Absolute has got the power to do all these things. We have to grant that power to it. That's what he's saying. Okay? All this which looks strange and abnormal or may seem fantastic to the surface reason, acquainted only with our normal status of limited ignorance and its movements, divided from our inner, higher and total reality, becomes easily intelligible and admissible in the light of the larger reason and logic of the infinite, or by the admission of the greater illimitable powers of the self, the spirit in us, which is of one essence with the infinite. So, big para where he is explaining that
yes,
Brahman consciousness, Brahman Purusha consciousness, Ishvara are all possible. They can be possible separately, they can also be possible all together also. Brahman, the reality, is the self-existent absolute, and Maya is the consciousness and force of this self-existence. But with regard to the universe, Brahman appears as the self of all existence, Atman, cosmic self, but also as the supreme self, transcendent of its own cosmicity, at the same time individual, universal in each being. Maya can then be seen as the self-power, Atma Shakti of the Atman. It is true that when we first become aware of this aspect, it is usually in a silence of the whole being, or at the least in a silence within, which draws back or stands away from the surface action. This self is then felt as a status in silence, an immobile, immutable being, self-existent, pervading the whole universe, omnipresent in all, but not dynamic or active, aloof from the ever-mobile energy of Maya. In the same way, we can become aware of it as a Purusha, separate from Prakriti, the conscious being, standing back from the activities of nature. But this is an exclusive concentration which limits itself to a spiritual status and puts away from it all activity in order to realize the freedom of Brahman, the self-existent reality, from all limitation by its own action and manifestation. It is an essential realization, but not the total realization. Nirvana. He is saying nirvana is not, it's essential, but not total. For we can see that the conscious power, the Shakti that acts and creates, is not other than the Maya or all knowledge of Brahman. It is the power of the self. Prakriti is the working of the Purusha, conscious being, active by its own nature. The duality then of soul and world energy, silent self and creative power of the spirit, is not something dual or separate. It is biune. As we cannot separate fire from the power of fire, as it has been said, so we cannot separate the divine reality and its consciousness force. Chit Shakti. This first realization of self as something intensely silent and purely static is not the whole truth of it. There can also be a realization of self in its power, self as a condition of world activity and world existence. However, the self is a fundamental aspect of Brahman, but with a certain stress on its impersonality. Therefore, the power of the self has the appearance of a force that acts automatically with the self sustaining it, witness and support and originator and enjoyer of its activities, but not involved in them for a moment. As soon as we become aware of the self, we are conscious of it as eternal, unborn, unembodied, uninvolved in its workings. It can be felt within the form of being, but also as enveloping it. We'll discuss this. As above it, surveying its embodiment from above, Adhyaksha. It is omnipresent, the same in everything, infinite and pure and intangible forever. This self can be experienced as the self of the individual, the self of the thinker, doer, enjoyer, but even so, it always has this greater character. Its individuality is at the same time a vast universality, or very readily passes into that. And the next step to that is a sheer transcendence, or a complete and ineffable passing into the absolute. The self is that aspect of the Brahman in which it is intimately felt as at once individual, cosmic, transcendent of the universe. The realization of the self is a straight and swift way towards individual liberation, a static universality, a nature transcendence. At the same time, there is a realization of self in which it is felt not only sustaining and pervading and enveloping all things, but constituting everything, and identified in a free identity with all its becomings in nature. Even so, freedom and impersonality are always the character of the self. There is no appearance of subjection to the workings of its own power in the universe, such as the apparent subjection of the Purusha to Prakriti. Apparent subjection. To realize the self is to realize the eternal freedom of the spirit. It's a very big para and a lot of things to be clarified, and Srimad is very concise in his language. So we have to go into each thing and understand exactly what he's saying. We'll do it next time.
Thank you, Rama. Namaste all. Thank you for attending.